Good morning. What do you think of when I say speed limit, stop sign, 10 commandments? That's right, rules. And I've said before that designs and art have a lot of rules in them. Some are external rules that are given to you, and other are kind of rules that you create, a framework you create to give your piece a sense of style and personality that's distinct. And so we're going to learn some of these rules for a particular type of design. These are called mandalas, and I want to just show you some student examples of mandalas. I think they're really beautiful. There are a lot of work on the front end, learning all the rules and the shapes and how to divide these up. But I think once you create the framework, you can create something that's a lot more advanced than maybe you would otherwise. Something I want you to look for as you look at these is, number one, the shapes that they've used. This person used a ton of repetitious shapes, really turning into something that looks like a flower. I don't know if they wanted, I mean, you just see all these petal type shapes. That repetition is good. I feel like it'd be nice to be broken up a little bit more maybe. Here's another one. What do you see about this one that's different than the other ones? I think this one's really effective because we have the glitter, we have the holes cut out. And I think we might also have sand in class that we could use for create different textures on these. I'm going to get some more here. We just have a lot of really nice ones. Here we see this person has almost a sun type look to it. Here we've got this just lines going one way and then the other, but really nice texture there. A lot of these end up kind of looking like flowers. Again, you see all these spikes. This one maybe looks like a sun, not that they're really trying for anything particular. What do you notice about the color scheme? You can see that the color schemes are very limited and restricted. Here we have analogous colors, related colors, so it goes from blue to green to yellow, and a little bit of orange here. Silver, white can be used with black. The neutrals can be used with anything because they're just, they're similar. Now this person did not limit the colors, more of a rainbow type theme, and that's neat in the way that it shifts. I mean, it's a very controlled use of all the colors. Very selective colors here, just yellow, dark blue, and light blue. Again, silver, black, and white aren't colors, they're just values. This one's, I feel like this one could have used another color or two. This one's very restricted color use also. But lots of great examples that we could just go on and on with these. But I hope you're able to see that they're very uniform, they're limited color use, and there's a lot of texture in these. Like this one's a good example. You can see all the different pen work they did, the lines here, the lines moving different directions here that give it interest. A lot of them, if anything, maybe didn't create enough texture in theirs. Here's another example of some texture toward the center. That's good. Here we want to complete the other half of the mandala under step number 3. Here I've given you this half. Over here's another one, a little different. And the first thing you really start to do with mandalas is break the page in half. So you could measure to try to find this, but much easier is just to hold your ruler on one corner to the other, and this will get you the center of your page. Now, of course, to get the center from here to here, you would want to measure that. This block is 3 inches, so 1.5. Measure on both sides to get that. If you just measure on this side, what happens is the ruler starts to drift down. And so we've measured here and here to 1.5. You want to do that also up here. When we're talking about a square, everything's the same on one side versus the other. We're not talking about a rectangle. So you've got this page divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sections. Think of this as a pie, and we're cutting the pie down. Now, it can be cut down more. And an easy way to do, you could measure from like a straight line from here to here, but it gets problematic, hard to see. It's actually easier to just eyeball it on this curve, make a little mark right about where you think the center is. And we're going to go to the middle of each of these. Okay, and then we're going to cut this pie in again. So we're going to make a line from here to here, always going from the center. We're trying to get these segments as even as we can. Nobody likes it if they get the small piece of pie, unless it's green tomato pie. Then they don't much care. Okay, so I assume that this got broken in half again to get these down to real small little segments. So we're going to go in half again, half, 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 half. Make sure you're using a ruler to make these lines. One of the beautiful parts of, there, that's off a little bit. One of the beautiful parts of a mandala is just how controlled and detailed everything is. Draw these lines lightly. I've been powering them down real heavy. Most of these lines will get erased or changed. So to really draw these in strong is going to be problematic. So there we go, all these lines. Now this is the structure from which the rest of this goes. Now we're just copying simply the sun-shaped design. In the future I'm going to show you how to make other ones, but for now we're just trying to copy this sun-like pattern, and we have this sort of sun ray pattern and then lines going this way and then the sun ray. And so let me pause for a moment to show you some tools that are going to really help with circles. You may or may not be familiar with the compass. You get the sharp end here and the pencil end here to make a circle. You need to know, I can kind of see this other designs popping through here. Say that's the center of the design of the page, and then you figure out how big you want the circle by bringing this in or out. I kind of like to lean the compass this way, and then I like to rotate the paper, not putting a lot of pressure on the compass. What happens if you put downward pressure on it? A lot of times it'll kind of move out like that on you and not give you an accurate circle. So this compass, you always stay on this center point, and then you make lots of circles down from this at whatever intervals you want. A tool that's really helpful are circle templates. Here's some large circles. It's maybe a little easier to use than a compass, but then of course you've got to have this whole range of circles. Okay, back to what we were doing, the little sun mandala. I decided, it'd be a little more accurate. Go in the center of this, figure out how far down these little sun rays come to, and I can make a little bit of a circle there. And that's going to show me how far down to make the sun rays. So like this. And then every other one, just make a sun ray. Doesn't hurt to make a little mark to where the center point where that's going. And you would just keep going, doing that on all of those. Then what you see happen is this is made a little bit bolder. That'll get outlined eventually. And you keep outlining your sun rays to give them more importance. And then we've got all these little lines behind it, which is sort of your pen technique. We're just using pencil right now, and the final one would actually be pen. The important part is to keep them evenly spaced, neat, and kind of curved, right? Okay, so right here is where that little sun ray ends. And you just keep going down through doing those little lines. Now we see that we used a different texture in this area. This is, do you remember what this is called? This is cross hatching. And of course cross hatching is lines going one way and then lines going the other way. And that's what's going right in there. Okay, so finish up this and you've got that one. See if you can figure out how to do this one based on what we did there. Know that the pie is going to have to get cut down a little bit more. Here, here, and here. Yeah, I think you'll get that. Okay. On number 4 on the packet, well, backtrack. Number 3, you were just doing exactly what you saw over here. So you're just completing the other half. Now here, I'm calling these practice mandalas, where you're doing more steps. You can see on this side I've already broken this pie down a good bit. Here it needs broken down a little more. So you're going to just want to start by holding the ruler here. Sometimes these straight work better as a straight edge. And I just brought that line into here. I didn't take it the whole way to the center, and that's just my preference. Okay, so here is the beginning structure for your mandala. You could break these down more if you wanted. For smaller shapes, you could add other circles. Let's add another circle just to show you what that might look like. With this, you've got these guidelines. These need to line up with like this line, this line. So put this on here. To try to center it, you're trying to get this to line up with those lines. About like that. Then make your circle. And you know, that just changes it up. So now in this row, this row, this row, and this row, you have to come up with a different shape or pattern. I mean, we could just leave it the way it is, but it's usually more interesting to break it up a little bit. So maybe I decide to make sort of a U shape from here to here. That means that each one of these now, I mean, most likely each one of these is going to get that same U shape going around. Okay. When we get to this, we have to figure out, well, what are we going to do from here to here? And I could make a little point go to the center, here to here. So once you make that decision, you're going to continue that the whole way around there. On this row here, maybe I'm going to fill it with circles. I could use this little circle template. I think I can get about 3 of these in here. You might have to change it based on what it really does, and maybe I'll just keep going with those. Okay, so there's that, and then I need some kind of pattern in here, and pattern or really, I shouldn't say pattern or texture. It's more creating the shapes. I think I'm going to just go like this. So it's going to give us a little star-like shape right in the middle here. Okay. Kind of round, make a rounded approach to that star. Okay. So you can see, you kind of got the basic structure of what this is going to look like now. But now we need to think about pen ink shading techniques. We could use line or cross hatching or curved line or stippling in any of those. We might want to try one of these textures or create our own. This is just, I call these BBs. Got little snail, curlicues, hills. These are one of my favorite. Checkerboard, scales. So then you go back to this and you might create, I might just use a line on this. I think line kind of radiating out this way would probably look good because it kind of copies what's happening there already. Sort of like that. You might decide that, well, I want that to really stand out, so we're going to kind of create a shadow or a bold line behind this star shape. Some of this stuff is busy enough. With these beads, we might end up just shading this darkly. You know, kind of like that. Right here, I think we're just going to make this black. Make that solid. If you want maximum contrast, go for black. If you want kind of a grayed out area, go line or stippling or cross hatching. What else here? Let's do some diagonal line here. I'm going to make the diagonal lines go the opposite way here. And opposite way here. And you have, I mean, if you were to envision this finished, you've got your textures in here, and that you would do this one, and then you would do this one also for your practice mandalas. Okay, now what we want to do is do this from the top. You've already done all these practice ones. Now we're down to making your own, and this is number 2, or what is this, number 5, create your own. And we're going to start, you're going to follow these numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, but the spacing and everything can be different with some of this. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get a piece of paper and cut it down to a square. Mine happens to be 9 by 9. You might want yours a little larger or smaller based on your paper. So after you have your square, you want to find the center by going from the exact corner to the other exact corner, right? And draw the same line here. Now we know that this is the center without a lot of fancy measuring. So once you have that X there, you want to take your compass and put it right here in the center. And we want this to probably stay back from the edge about an inch. And we're going to rotate this around. And we've got our outer circle. Now we want to do this. We're going to make some more circles. We can put them close together. We can put them far apart. It's really up to you. The smaller you make them, the more, say, dainty this becomes and detailed. The bigger you make them, the more you're going with, obviously, big shapes. I'm trying to make this one the same. So we get this repetition of the width of the, from here to here and here to here. Now I'm ready for I think a bigger circle. I go like this. You wanna draw these lighter than I'm making them. I want you to be able to see them, but in your case, you really want to be able to erase this. Any sections of this that later on aren't part of it. I'm going to try to make this distance like very small circles to kind of copy what we've already done here. Okay, I got a little bit smaller than I wanted there on the one end, but I'm going to try to make it about this width. If you wanted to be exact, you could really take a ruler and say, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 sixteenths. I think that's right there. 13, 14, 15, 16, yeah. And go on here. Now we have this all broken up into the circles and the spacing that we think we want. Can always change that later if we want to do it a little differently. Actually, I'm feeling like we need to put one more in here. Don't know why. I think that looks better. Okay, now we want to divide, we want to cut the pie. And quarter of pie is way too much, right? So you want to measure from here to here. We know this is 9 inches on mine. So center is 4.5 here and 4.5 here. And that should go right through the center of your piece. Get everything lined up good. Draw a light line. Same thing up here. Make sure you're measuring this, not just guessing on these big structures. Line this up real nice. Lightly draw that. Now you have your pie. Now you got 8 pieces of pie. We want to cut this in half again because that's an awful big shape between here and here. This is where I say start to eyeball it. I'd like to just kind of say, well, that looks like about the center. This looks like about the center. Okay, so now we're going to connect this through the center and over to here. And here we have, I believe, 16 pieces of pie. And this gives us, you know, as you're down in here, it's very small shapes. As you come out this way, it's actually very large shapes. And it's within here. So if you're following along on your packet, this is number 4. We've done step 4. And you could divide this down into more pieces if you wanted it smaller. I think we're going to call this small enough for this one. And then in this last step 6, well, this step 6, you start to make these shapes in here. So you can start out here and work in, or vice versa. I think starting toward the edge is maybe a little more ideal. I think one of the things I've liked doing is when I make an X like this, it's a really, you get an X initially, but then you start getting this sort of overlapping spike depending on how you color this in. Okay. Whoa. So we're getting that pattern. That'll go the whole way around. Let's do something else in here. Feel like continuing with this line might be good, but where am I going to take it? So I'm going to take it right to here. So if I try to pre-mark where these lines are going to go to, that might be effective. So I think of this as a continuing line. Pay attention to the curve of the line, the feel of the line, because you know, you could make that super straight or you could make it somewhat curved. I really like what's happening there. You're getting sort of this repetition of shapes and different smaller things happening. And I think we're going to stop with that line cutting through one circle to the next, and here it's going to be a new sort of distinct pattern. And an easy thing to do there is just do this. I'm going to do that the whole way. Okay. On the other side, I'm going to bring it the opposite way. This oftentimes looks kind of like cord or sort of like that. Now when we get into here, I don't know if I want to do something similar to this or change it up with like vertical lines. I think I'm going to make like this. I'm going to imagine I'm taking this line and curving out like this. And that's cool because now we go into sort of like a sun ray type effect, but it still feels like it's tying into this piece up here. And you can see how the effect of that. Now I have to decide if I want to bring this line down into here somehow or let this more open, sort of like the feel of a sun or the center of the flower. I think I'm going to keep this line going somehow. But how I want to do that is the question. I feel like it might help me to have another circle to help guide where this is going to come to. So we're going to do another circle here, and that's, you can change this stuff up as you go. And I'm going to bring this down like this to that point. And then I'm going to have them cross over. Actually, I'm going to cross. This is going to get a little confusing, but I'm going to skip this and aim right for this. And I'm going to skip this and aim for this. And what I love about that, say skip this, aim for this. You get this, say, this curving pattern that starts to happen through here. It's a little more complex. I believe I'm doing that right. Now you don't have to do stuff this complex. You can stay right within the shape, but you can. I'm just showing you the range of difficulty that this can have. And then I feel like this lends itself well to just finishing out with a little bit more curve on this. And you get the idea this overall piece is going to go. And you can start to show the overall effect by erasing out lines that you don't want to have there. We could erase out all of this. So let's just pretend that I filled in all of this area with this pattern. Now we're at the step where you've got to figure out what kind of going back to this first page, what pen and ink shading techniques you want, what textures you want. And maybe it doesn't need to be one on there. Preferably, some of them will be your own textures. So I'm kind of seeing this, and you can erase out any of these lines that just don't, that it would look better without. Now let's imagine that I fill this whole area in with my design. I used mostly line. I decided to add this little circular spiral thing here. Now you want to get some type of Sharpie mark or something that's permanent. If you don't have that, ballpoint pen would work just fine. So I'm going to go in here and just as neatly as possible begin to outline everything. Okay, here I have a small section done in pen. You could do the black in pen, or you could save that for colored pencil. My preference is probably colored pencil to do black areas. You can also begin to, like in this area, you can see that I'm not just outlining that once, but I'm going back and forth over it a couple times to try to create a little bit of a sense of overlapping. It makes this shape look like it's in front of these lined shapes and gives these importance and sets these behind it. You can do that by outlining that a couple times. You can also save that for the colored pencil and do some like black in that area over, let's say a blue shape, maybe that's black shading there to create like a shadowed effect. But anyhow, so at that point you've got all of your design. If you've inked that all, your design will start to show up better, and you really start to have a sense of where this is going. And the next decision would be colors. An old color wheel, I've been around a long time. With choosing colors, it's always safe to choose analogous colors, ones next to each other in the color wheel. That would be like yellow and orange and red would look nice together because they're all related, or a different range of those. You know, maybe it's yellow, green, and blue look good together. Or the other way to go is, rather than going with analogous colors, go with complementary colors that are opposite each other in the color wheel. That would be yellow and purple, red and green, or orange and blue. Those are your three sets of complementaries, and they tend to be contrasty in nature and make more of a visual pop when beside each other. So I'd stay away from red and green unless you're trying to do the Christmas theme. Let's look at a couple successful ones. The color theme. Is this analogous or complementary? Got yellow, green, blue, all next to each other in the color wheel. Looks great. You got gold in here. Kind of brings out that warm color feel. If you do silver, that's bringing out more of the cool colors. Here is another one. You got purple and blue, and maybe some peach. The peach isn't really on the color wheel per se, but you see that we got purple and blue. We're going with an analogous color scheme. Here's another analogous, and this one's awesome. I really love the type of flow to this one with the line work, but also the colors. So you've got gold and the light green, and the light blue and the dark blue, and the yellow, all very related, and yeah, excellent. Okay, next we want to start to think about the colors that you're going to use. Take your pack of colored pencils, sort of start to take some that you think look good together and say, hey, maybe this is going to be the basis of my color scheme. And then some fun ones are also metallic. If you have metallic colored pencils, you certainly don't have to have them, but if you have them, they can be a lot of fun. Now, a lot of these metallics are actually colors, so if you're using those, count those in your color scheme. Now, if you're using something like gray or bronze, they're a bit more neutral. Maybe definitely don't count as your color scheme quite so much. Gold, bronze, silver, not as influential. But anyhow, when you're certain of one, it usually works best to just pick one color at a time. So I really want yellow for these spikes. So I'm going to color them yellow and then reassess what the next color is going to be. One of the colored pencil techniques that I like the best is changing the intensity. So imagine that this is going to be white at the bottom, it's yellow at the top, and I want to fade gradually from yellow into white, and that gives you just a special effect that you wouldn't have otherwise. So use that a lot. Notice that color selection wise, I've already used yellow in these shapes and used it a second time here. You use those colors oftentimes, many times. So I've got yellow, now I've got to look at my options of other colors. I often think of, like, silver is a cool color. It would be more contrasty next to this warm yellow. I could use gold next to the yellow, but then it's more related, so I'm going to go silver on this. Okay, next color selection. You see I did the silver here and here to a similar style. Now I got these background lines here I want to pick colors for. I decided to do metallic blue and metallic green every other line. So let's just do all the blue lines first. Sure about the intensity that you want them to be. Like if you want them really dark at one end and light at the other end, you can always make it all light and then later on increase the darkness. But you can't go the other way. You can't make it really intense and then change that later. So I like that as a background color. I wanted to use one color that's really bright and really pop out, so I'm going to go with this bright red here and use that in the whirlpool looking thing for lack of a better term for this. Don't be afraid to have fun with the color application, putting it thick and thin in places. That's going to really help. I'd have a better sense what this looks like if we had it all done, but I think my gut reaction is to stick with silver beside this. And at this point we've made most of our color selections, and we just we'd have to decide what we want to do here. If we want to color the solid black, which is most traditional, some of the metallics are good for that. A real favorite of mine's been indigo blue out here because it's enough to show a faint touch of color, but it's really, think of it as navy blue. So aside from putting glue on certain ones and adding glitter or sand or using an X-Acto knife and cutting out some of these, this is most of the steps for the mandala.